So I am very excited to be doing this walkthrough for you today. I have already had a chance to take a good look at this and been kind of, analyzing it. I went through and compared it to the historical decks, sort of card by card, especially in the majors, and have really been enjoying this. And so I'm excited to be able to share this with you. What, pray tell, might it be, you ask? Although, of course, you already see it in the title. But this is a redrawing of the Nicolas Conver Tarot de Marseille. This is done by Artisan Tarot. There is a website called the Artisan Tarot, and I will have the links below. The Kickstarter for this deck is starting today, and so I'll put a link to the Kickstarter and a link to the website. But I've had this for a little while, so I have been able to enjoy it and take a close look at it. What is special about the Conver Tarot, and this is a deck that I really love. You can get copies of this. You can get copies, I believe, in some of the older versions. I believe maybe the 1880 version you can get, like reproductions of. I have the CBD. I've had the CBD tarot for a long time, which is a relining that was put out by Yoav Ben Dov, and that is a deck that I like to use a lot in terms of teaching with pips. And so I was really excited to hear that there was more attention being put on this beautiful deck. And the reason why, I am not, please do not take me as a tarot historian. I am not a tarot historian. I like to look and see as much as I can what's going on, but do not take me for a historian here. So do your research, right? But what's wonderful about, or what's important, I should say, about the Conver Tarot is this is a deck that was produced in, or at least I know the edition that this is, as well as I believe the Yoav Ben Dov, is based on the 1760 edition of this deck, and it was seen, or is seen, as an extremely popular and long-running Marseille deck. Now, I did read something that indicated there may have been a Marseille deck, I believe, in Switzerland potentially before this, that was found in a museum, but this is definitely one of those, like, the kind of Marseille deck from Marseille. What was interesting about this deck is, we're going to take a look at it, but I like to get these bits out first. What was interesting about this deck is that it was, for a long time, it was painted with a stencil technique and used a light blue and a green, and a lot of green, and then a lot of this beautiful light blue that you didn't see later, because by the time a century later or so, the line from the wood templates, the lines were getting really messy. They'd been used over and over again, and so obviously if you get reproductions or look at some of the decks that are still there, the lines are very messy and lightened, and missing parts and things of that nature from being used. And then apparently what happened in the end of the 19th century, the second half of the 19th century, and then during the Industrial Revolution, then they started to change everything to the four color machines, and then the colors changed. The green went away, the beautiful light blue went away, and so if you look in comparison, and I'll put a link, there is a website, I don't know what the name of the actual website is, but it has some information, and it shows where you can look at the majors of the 1760, and then I believe you can look at all of the cards of the 1880 1880 version of the Conver tarot. And that's really interesting to take a look at it, because you will see that the colors just dramatically changed, and you lost these beautiful blues that we're going to see, and you lost the greens. What's also really cool about this site is that you can see the wooden templates. I don't know if you can see all of them, but there are quite a few links where you can look at these wood templates that were used to make these decks. So I really strongly encourage you to take a look at the links, the link below, and see again, make sure that you look at the 1760 edition, which is what this is relined from and recolored from, and make sure you then see the difference between the 1880, and then take a look at the wood templates, because it's just a really amazing history of tarot that we should be, honoring, enjoying, and taking a look at and learning from in a powerful way. So that's sort of the preamble as to why, why would somebody like this Artisan Tarot, why would they take group, why would they take this deck and rework it? Well, it's because it's an important deck. So this is a beautiful tuck box that it comes in. You'll have to check out the Kickstarter. Obviously, this was a review edition, and so sometimes there are changes that take place from in the final. So you'll definitely have to look at that on there. And it even says first edition review deck, and so there could be changes that may come in. So you'll always, of course, want to take a look closely at the Kickstarter. But this says Tarot de Marseille, a faithful restoration based on the tarot printed in Marseille by Nicolas Conver in 1760. This has been hand restored and adapted by Kristen Condor with the guidance from William Radar, and I think together they are artisantarot.com. So you want to take a look at that. I actually really love the backs here that they chose to do. I think that they are really clean and simple, but they feel like the backs of a lot of historical decks that you would have seen, and so I quite like that about the deck. I also like that it is at least this version, again, check your details, but this version is a gorgeous linen. I'm a huge fan of good linen playing card stock. It's what I want my tarot decks to be, and this feels that. And I have not riffled it. I will after we walk through it. I've just been looking through it and comparing it to different things and stuff like that. But I do really love the feel of this card stock. So really happy with that. And then it comes in this tuck box. I did see on their Instagrams they had some really cool looking wood boxes that not only held the deck inside but had a stand on it. I don't know if that's going to be part of the Kickstarter different goals, a goal being reached, or if that's something that you can get, but that was really cool. So it's always cool to see what comes up in a Kickstarter. So that's all you'll have to go there for all those details. But there's that, and this is just like a business card. But this is what we're here to take a look at. I'm gonna put this in here and zoom in so that you can see most especially these beautiful blues. Now I will say for myself, what I love about this is the faces and the actual skin. One of the things that I'm not a huge fan of in just the way in which color was placed onto these type of decks, these woodcut decks, and then of course they're stamped with the different colors onto them, and very often it's very difficult to see the difference between the skin and clothing. And of course some of that is probably how certain colors wore and aged. I'm sure there's a lot to do with that, and just that they had, again, 4 colors that they were sometimes stamping onto that, and so they just made use of what they had, right? But what I like, so a lot of times some of these reproductions, the faces tend to end up looking really dark and or orangey, and I really have noticed this all the way through the majors, that the faces, even where there is this sort of neutral, almost flesh tone to around the faces. The faces are actually lighter than neck. You can see that there with kind of turtleneck around his neck in the Magician. And you can certainly see this here with the Pappas or the High Priestess here with her versus her veil there that's around her face. And that's something I personally appreciate because, again, I'm just not a big fan of that when it looks like their clothing is like part of their skin. So that was the first thing that I noticed about this. The other thing is you can notice right away, obviously the devil cat going after the man bits is, you know, classic historical decks that you can only love. I mean, look at that little cat face. He is like going for it with claws, and he looks a little bit devilish there. But other than, once you get away from noticing that, the other thing that you notice is this beautiful blue. Now, the greens, I will say, are really gorgeous and dark here. They often look light, and they look lighter, a bit lighter green. Well, obviously in the older, if you go click on that link, they're quite a bit lighter green, almost like a Kelly green. Of course, we will have assumed that things will have faded from that particular, and obviously each person who is going to recreate an historical deck, not trying to reproduce it in its old look, but trying to create it in what it could have looked like in its, you know, glory, and then of course the ability that we have to color things today, has to make those kinds of decisions as to, okay, well, what would this have looked like, right, when all of the ink was fresh. And so they've definitely gone to a darker green, which I think is actually really beautiful and makes the blue stand out anymore. But what is important, or what is striking in the Conver, is the use of this beautiful pale blue, as well as in the copious amounts of greens that we have here that we lose when it comes to when they start to use the 4-color machines, and then they completely change the colors, and we don't have those colors in the deck. And so of course, and then of course relining it and bringing back all of the crisp lines, because if you look at the older version, especially if you look at the majors from the 1880 version, you can really see where the lines from the wood blocks have degraded, right, over just being used over and over again for so long, that those lines have degraded. And so to have those lines be brought back into beautiful crispness is something that is beautiful to be able to see. Okay, so let's take a look at this beautiful deck. This was interesting here, the choice. You know, you look at some of the choices and you're just, to me it's fascinating to take a look at it. I think the Ben Dov or something that I've looked at has that painted as in green, almost like he's wearing leggings over it. Although I see a lot of older decks that have this look here, because it always is like, it's so strange to me when they have sort of that flushed tone clothes there. But yeah, but this blue, like right off the bat, you're seeing this beautiful blue. Here we have the Magician, and again, these colors are so important. From what we, you know, the using and reading in the Marseille tradition, which is not a tradition that I read from, but it's certainly something that I've studied, is really fascinating to see how much these color choices went into the reading, when we started to see texts about reading reading the Marseille in terms of divination. These colors were really important. So here we have the Magician. Here we have the beautiful Pappas, and you can see some of the differences. Here is, I'm currently reading this, and I'm going to do a review of this book as well. This is the Terre de Marseille. This is the a book from 1949, a French book by Paul Martau. I'm not sure how you say that correctly in French, but it has been translated into English by Marius Hognesen. I'm sure again that I am pronouncing that incorrectly as well. Has been translated into English, and so this is a book about the translator here was waiting and waiting for an English copy of this to come into being, and then ended up just doing it himself. Now they're using a version of the Conver tarot, which this book was not written on. The book was used a different deck. The original book did, but that because of copyright issues, they are using a reproduction of the Conver tarot, but one that was printed in the mid to late 19th century. So this has been shifted where you don't then see those greens and light blues, and so you can really see there where you've lost all of those beautiful pale blues there. You've lost the green. There's not as much green in this particular card, but you've lost the greens there as well. And you can see that. Again, you can take a look at that website, but I forgot that this had, so you can see where you've lost all of that beautiful pale blue, and any of the dark green here. You see the dark green around her, the green around her waist and around her neck. So you've lost all of that, and this was, around for a very long time, and these were the colors that people were seeing over and over and over again. And so then to have it switched to that is quite a shift in terms of, especially when you're using those colors and things to do your readings. But that really can highlight how you can, the difference, the Conver, what happened when it shifted into this machine printing. This, in the book, this was a particular, images were found in the British Museum, and used from the images from a set in the British Museum. So yeah, so you can really see those differences though when you lose those beautiful blues, and how much that can change the look of the deck. So this here we have that. We just see a pop of green at her wrist. Here we have the Emperor. I love, you get to really see his hair and curls and his beard with that kind of gray blue, but that pale blue works really well for like the men's beards and things like to denote an older man, right, versus a younger man that we see with the blonde curly hair in the Magician. We can really see that age shift, having the use of that light color blue there. That's really quite beautiful. I just did want to mention, whoops, you can pick up a book that I always really recommend, but especially with this deck, this is a great book. This is called, well, it was called Tarot the Open Reading. Actually, let me get, because I always forget what there's a new copy out here. Let me get what that's called. If you look on it in Amazon now, it's called the Marseille Tarot Revealed, a complete guide to symbolism, meanings, and methods. This is the same book that I have. I just have a version before that one was released. But there's a whole section in here on colors. Again, we've got the 8 colors of the Conver and the CBD, which is his version, his redrawing of the Conver. But we have all of the colors. So, you of course have white and black. You have your yellow and what they mean. But then you have these beautiful light blues, which again are missing, from the older reprintings. The color of the sky, a lighter degree of blue. This symbolizes a combination of matter and spirituality. It can also express clarity and transparency, truth and honesty, but also coldness and detachment. One can see in it a symbol of a wider, more comprehensive perspective, or an action which rises above petty and selfish considerations, the element of air. Then you have the green that of course we lose in the older renditions, the color of plants, the vegetable element representing growth and change, hinting at nature and natural things. Green may represent an impulse of growth and development, a potential for fertility, a new beginning, or a simple and non-sophisticated vision of reality. So we lose those things, right? We lose, whoops, I got these, I think, out of order now. Where's my, there she is. We use those symbols of the green that comes into this very ruling queen, right? The empress here, who is a ruler. But when you take away those greens and that connection with fertility and that connection with nature, that can really change the way these particular cards can be read when you're utilizing the colors that are there. And so I really do recommend both this book, which is, again, I told you, and I'll put the name of it in the description box below, and then this can also now be ordered, which is really goes into colors and just how everything, you know, when we look at pips, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just pips. When we get to the Ten of Swords, I'll read you the Ten of Swords because it's just a really rich tradition and way of reading that just is beautifully depicted in this particular deck, in my opinion, and is the easiest to see and to work with all of those colors. And even Yoav Ben Dov goes into the ways in which the lines are, whether they're soft and curvy lines, whether they're straight and more rigid line working. Is really quite amazing, impressive to be able to see the ways in which you can read these this system in this way. So there we have that. Again, I really love the faces. These are probably my favorites because that is, again, a personal pet peeve. And I really do like how those have been brightened. And even in the King, we can see that greens and those connections there as well. Here we have the Pope. Here we have the Lovers. A lot of greens in all three of them. And there are definitely some color changes that, you know, if you look at the 1760, at least on that one website. Remember, these decks were put out over and over again, and so I'm sure you can look at different versions of the decks that have survived and find different variations. Whereas I've seen some, I think, where this was all entirely green or not painted in, or even like the colors in the hair weren't there. But I think that the choices made, a lot of these make a lot of sense when you're following. I'm trying to think of another example. I feel like it was in the High Priestess robe. I have seen pieces of this be in different colors, but you can see where choices were made trying to see, okay, what was flowing for, like, if this is clearly an outer cloak, right, it's different than that inner robe that is there, and making those decisions as you're doing your reproduction. And it's interesting to see how those were made. I think you can really see a lot of the clarity of the line work in the little Cupid above, you know, which could get really messy at once the line work. And then again in the faces, which in these older woodcut decks can start to look really wonky as the lines kind of lose their sharpness and their clarity there. But I do think that Cupid really shows some beautiful line work. Here we have the Chariot. Here we have Justice. Even Justice getting her green sleeves there, which I do think is interesting. This is one I think you can really see where so much gets lost as these things start to degrade. Like if you see this particular one that's left, you know, the line work in the face really gets degraded. You've lost so much color detail in this one as well, and you can really see where you're really starting to lose that beauty that's there. And you can even see it reflected in the text, although again, this particular original book was not based on the Conver tarot, so you're not going to see the same colors. The original images were from the Ancient Tarot de Marseille by Grimaud. which illustrated the original book. But it really has to then talk about all this yellow, because obviously all of these other colors weren't there to work with anymore in the shifts. So, you know, when we had that shift into just 4 colors, that really probably changed a lot about the way in which people were able to then have those colors to use as interpretation. But I find it really interesting that in Justice, that is, you know, so clean and clear air energy, that you have that sort of rooted, grounded earth colors show up as well. Here we have the Hermit. Again, really love the faces. I think the line work on the faces and the brightening of the faces just really brings them to life. You can see a lot of the blues in here, the light blues. Here we have this. I really love this, the Conver Strength card. Again, I like her face. I love the face and the look of the, looks almost more like a sweet Cocker Spaniel with its curly hair and its face. Let me show you his face up close. It almost looks like it's got beautiful eyelashes there. Here we have the Hanged. Here we have Death. You definitely see, you lose a lot of this black as well. I can't see that as well. And so when that black gets brought in, and you can really see the field of death that we often see in Marseille decks, with the hands and the feet and the heads that are actually into the earth, into the soul that's being harvested by death here, and the very strange outfit kind of going down the spinal column into this little piece here. Yeah, definitely looks like he still has some degree of flesh on there as well. Again, that blue is so beautiful in the Temperance card, and you can actually see the beautiful light blue in the water. It's really lovely, and you can see the difference between the land and the water as well. It's just quite lovely. I do love this Temperance, and I love the star, Conver star. Of course, I also do love the Devil. Like, you can't beat a good Devil card in the historical decks. There is definitely a lot going on, mixing of biological body parts, usually these little horned creatures as well. One of the things that's interesting is that if you, in reading Yoav Ben Dov's book, he talks about how, you know, can this be the Christian devil, like of absolute evil? Sure. But we do often can see this as being sort of mischievous kind of imp or demon, right? And it does have that kind of feel. Like, now some of the other historical decks don't look so much that way, but these almost look like sort of mischievous little devils or imps or things like that. Doesn't quite have the same degree of weight as some. There are some pretty interesting ones. It can also, I think he also talks about how it could even be associated with like Pan or those types of energies as well. So there's that. Here we have the House of God, or the Tower. The title of it as the House of God, to me, certainly ties it much more closely to the Tower of Babel, and that sort of humanity trying to build a tower up to God, right? And that really getting thwarted, and really having to, what burns away is that sort of pride and that arrogance. It makes a different connotation, right, to the Tower card than sort of that modern feel of just something coming in natural, striking of things just happening, and there's just nothing you can do about it. It's that sort of unexpected act of God there's nothing you can do about. Whereas this is a bit more consequent. And I have to say, you know, with historical decks, I think you lose, it versus modern decks, you lose the sort of consequence of the traitor or the hanged person as being somebody who's there because of the consequences of their choices. And then the same thing with the Tower. If we kind of lose the fact fact that some of what is getting struck and burnt away are things that are not serving us well, that are things that need to be burned away. That takes a different twist, right, on the tower, and how we would read the tower when that comes up in a reading. Here we have the beautiful star. I absolutely love the star in the Conver, and you can really see the green hills in the background, the yellow tones in the grasses like wheat, and you have the beautiful light blues there then of water, which are just so beautiful, that obviously you miss out. I'm trying to pull up here the because I want to check. I've been looking at these and comparing these to images, but I just, yeah, that little bird is in there. I love, oops, there you go. Hey, she's just so sweet, and her hair is so beautiful. And then look at this little bird right here. I just love that in the Conver Tarot. That always jumps out. But see those beautiful green rolling hills, and then you just really get the contrast with that beautiful light blue, versus if you go and you take a look at the star card. All of this is kind of turned into the yellows. Her hair actually isn't even yellow in the one that it's just in the stars, you know, with the dark blues, all dark blues instead of the light blue. It just really changes the flow of this. Such a beautiful depiction of the star card. This is one of my favorite depictions of the star card. Here we have the moon. Again, we get a lot of that light blue waters. We have the beautiful greens that are there, and then we have all of those colors coming down as well from the moon. Here we have the sun. You know, I'd like to blame sun babies and babies in the sun card on the Rider-Waite-Smith, but it's not the fault of the Rider-Waite-Smith. I'm not a fan of the six-packed babies. These aren't so six-packed. They just look like they're wearing skin clothes. But these are actually better than some. I do appreciate that. And I actually do like the sun there. And of course we get the blue butt cheeks. So, you know, what we're going to do if we're going to lose those light blue of the person that I'm looking at. Yeah, so in the deck following this, you know, when they lose all these colors, all of these just become one color, where here we actually get the dead rising out of the tomb in its blue state, that we would miss without all of that beautiful light blue. Not to mention all of the beautiful detail in the angel calling forth the judgment is really lost when all of this crispness and all of these beautiful colors are gone, and so you just kind of see something that looks like a bit of a blob until, you know, having an opportunity to really bring those colors back, and those crisp lines just really brings it to life. And look at that. Look at how sweet she is. Her face and her hair, look at all that detail just gets so blobbed up, you know, when you lose all of the detail of the line work. So that's our majors, which of course people will say, oh, well, that's all of the interesting things, right, in a pip deck, but it's not. I did want to talk, this is just beautiful. I love the Conver minors, right? They have the beautiful curved swords, which I'm a huge fan of, against the straight wands, which are so important because it makes it so obvious in a reading what you're looking at, a sword or you're looking at a wand. Again, the colors are just beautiful. I wanted to just read the description here from this translation here of the book, the Tarot Marseille, of the Ten of Swords. To, you know, forever prove why I, you know, love the Ten of Swords. But also to show that there is so much meaning that's going on in this particular card. And so it really talks about, so I'm going to just read through some of this here, just on this one, just so you can get an idea when looking at the unscenic minors, that there is still a lot that can be used and is used by readers of the Marseille tradition and other traditions to read these minors, even though they don't have scenes. So again, I'm reading an English translation of the Tarot de Marseille, a French author, Paul Marteau, maybe, which was published in 1949. The number 10 represents the final equilibrium of a first evolutionary cycle and serves as the basis for the following cycles, the ones to come, right? The 10 of Swords makes this work manifest at a time of improvement and transition through the arrangement of the two swords well defined, whose sword points remain inside of the oval of the 8 Schminter swords and whose guards remain outside. This arrangement is the reverse of all the preceding odd numbers. So if you look at the odd numbers, the sword, the guards are inside and the points are outside, but in the 10 the guards are outside and the points are inside. This arrangement is a reverse, I already said that, of all the remaining odd number sword cards, and symbolizes in this way the conscious direction imposed by man to his vital activities, both to ensure internal protection through his knowledge of the balancing of forces and to synthesize them into a unit capable of being repeated again with the benefit of its knowledge. And then it continues to go on. The points of the swords are inside the oval. They're supported by the red and the yellow, because it was using a different deck, the red and the yellow guards of the swords, and so on and so forth. And it's quite amazing to see how this 10 of Swords, in the elementary sense, the 10 of Swords represents the emotional sense of man that, when clarified by the harmonious balance of his experiences, allows him to act with knowledge of the facts, as well as to involve himself affectionately in the way a mother watches over and protects her creation. A very different 10 of Swords than the Rider-Waite-Smith. And again, it talks about the flowers too, because there are 4 flowers on the other swords, but when you get to the 10th one, you have the 2 swords there, or the 2 flowers that are there. There's just so much that goes into potentially reading the minors of a non-scenic Marseille deck that is really quite stunning and full. You can make it as simple or as complex as you want to. So anyways, here we have the beautiful swords. I'll just flip through those. I love on the even ones, whoops, we have, obviously on the odd ones you're going to have the swords coming through, but on the even ones we have this one, we have a different flowering there. Even this is a different flowering plant in the 4 than in the 6. Look at that. Isn't that so stunning? This is an absolutely beautiful 3 of Swords. I love this. Possibly my favorite 3 of Swords. A pip style one. Here we have the 2 of Swords, and then there we have the beautiful, look at that gorgeous Ace of Swords. Here we have the Page of Swords. The Knight. Love that horse. Very fancy head armor there. The Queen. The King. Very fancy. Look at that line work. When you look at the flowy line work in the dress here, into this very, it's just a different energy to the line work, where it's very precise and very sort of, look at all these straight line hatches there. You can really see the difference. That brings us to the beautiful wands. And again, the different plant life that you're getting is not the same thing repeated over and over again. It's different expressions of the plants here. And then to the ace. Here we have, I love the just really look, does this not look like you could beat somebody over the head with that club? This to me is a club, not a wand. But it says baton, it doesn't say wand. Well, I don't know what baton, somebody will have to say, does that translate as club? Because those are not wands. That you use that to hit somebody over the head. I love the fabric on the Knight of Wands here. There's the Queen. Look at her beautiful headpiece here with the green. So gorgeous. That would all be gone. And a very gold king. But again, look at all these precise lines and rectangles in his armor. Then we have the cups. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Beautiful. 4, 3. 3 of cups is so gorgeous. 2s are amazing. Look at that. You cannot say that these are non-illustrated. They are beautifully illustrated. They're just not scenic. Look at, I love this too. Look at his in the page, look at the flowers in his hair. I love that. The Knight, the Queen, and then the King. Now you'll notice that the King of Cups, his armor is definitely much more fabric oriented and much more softer than you saw in the very active Swords and Wands. I think that's interesting. Pentacles in Marseille style decks are my favorite. I love, they're just stunning. I like, this is how I like my 7s, 4 plus 3. I do look for that, because if it's a deck I'm going to use, I like to see that configuration. Look at how beautiful that 4 is. That, I mean, the 3s and the 2s are, look, and of course, 2 of Pentacles are always so stunning. So there we have our Conver 1760. And then the beautiful ace. Here we have our page. I love the sometimes ran like, now why is all of a sudden the page name over here instead of beneath them? I don't know if we know that answer or not. I don't know the answer. And they do look much more solid all together. Here we have the Queen. I love the blues in here. And then the King. And then again, I feel like the King of Cups, the King of Earth, have a much more cloth softness to their armor, so to speak, armor or their clothing, instead of the more military, harder lines of the active energy and in the Knights, or in the Swords and the Wands. So there's that. Let me zoom back out here. So I just think they did a really beautiful job. It just brings to life so much of the beautiful colorations, but you can just see, like, you know, like that beautiful leaf in the headdress of the Queen of Wands would be completely a blob and missing without that gorgeous green. The flowers in the headdress. Yeah, this riffle's gorgeous. This is, like, again, my favorite cardstock. It is good linen plain cardstock. This, to me, doesn't get any more perfect. I know there's a lot of people that love really thick, you know, give me 350, 400 GSM cardstock. For Riffle Shuffler, no. Like that is just not not something. This is a absolute joy to shuffle with. So as always, let me just show you what this looks like beautifully laid out with all these colors popping in my typical setup. Look at that. 5 of Swords energy is getting disrupted. Stable energy of the 4 getting disrupted here. We have fire. We've got the House of God burning and falling in the position of fire. In the position of air, we have the 7 of Wands in the position of water. So to have that Ace of Cups in the position of water. And things are shifting and changing in the earthly realm. As above, rule your emotions, don't be ruled by them. And so below, we have that strong stability and mastery of the 8 of Wands. I don't see 8 of Wands as being about swiftness. And what I love about the Wands and the Swords is you literally see that interlacing. Like, look how strong and stable that interlacing looks with that 8 of Wands. I love that. If you're reading numerologically, that really pops out there. So absolutely beautiful. I hope you have enjoyed this look. Again, I will have links to the historic copies of the deck, a link to the website of the Artisan Tarot, and a link to the Kickstarter for this beautiful restoration or reproduction of the Conver, Nicolas Conver Tarot. So I'm really pleased to have been able to show this to you, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.